Good, Carl. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. It's Municipality of West Grey public meeting dealing with planning. And I'm going to ask, is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof from the members here? Seeing none, does a rise can be declared at any time. Ms. Noble, do you have update for anybody that's joining us online?
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Eccles, before I begin, at any point, if you get disconnected, you can dial 1. It's red.
Yeah.
Anyways, if you get disconnected, you can dial 1-647-558-0588 and enter the ID for this meeting, which is 891-5626-2480. Both members of council and staff have been briefed of the various features of the Zoom meeting software and will be raising their hands physically to speak. For members of the public, if you require any technical assistance, please send a chat message to myself, Ashley Noble, Communications Coordinator, and I will attempt to assist you. It should be noted for members of the public that this meeting is taking place across 2 meeting platforms, both on Zoom as well as being live streamed on YouTube. Public participation, if any, must be done through Zoom and cannot be done through YouTube at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Noble. So the first one on our agenda today, we're dealing with zoning amendments at a 21-2024 444374 concession 8. I've got some preliminary announcements to make. And I'd like to remind everyone that the purpose of this public meeting is to receive input from the public. Every person who attends a statutory public meeting required under the Planning Act shall be given an opportunity to make presentation in respect of the proposed bylaw. All submission materials for this application are available at the West Grey Municipal Office during regular business hours. Recent amendments to the Planning Act may be by the province now limit appeal rights on zoning bylaw amendment applications to the applicant, public bodies, and specified persons who made oral or written submissions to the municipality prior to a decision being made. Specified persons generally include energy, railroad, and telecommunications providers, as well as NAV Canada. This meeting is an essential part of the decision-making process. Feedback will be considered in this decision of the West Grey Council. An explanation of how the public and agency comments factored into the decision will be included in the notice of passing of the bylaw. When changes are made in the proposed bylaw after holding a public meeting, council will determine if any further notice will be given respecting the proposed bylaw, and the determination of council as to the giving of further notice is final and not subject to the review in any court, no matter the extent of the change made in the proposed bylaw. Very good. Comments from the clerk. Jamie, please, Mr. Eckensweiler.
Thank you, Mayor Eccles. And through you, notice of this public meeting was circulated to the prescribed bodies, posted on the subject property, and mailed to all properties within 120 meters of the subject property in accordance with the Planning Act. Anyone wishing to provide verbal comments at this public meeting is asked to sign the sign-in sheet located on the speaker's table. The personal information collected at this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Planning Act. The information collected will be used to complete the zoning bylaw amendment process and will form part of the public record. Questions about this collection should be addressed to me, the Director of Legislative Services / Clerk. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Grey on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the Municipality of West Grey, care of the Director of Legislative Services / Clerk.
Thank you, Jamie. Those formalities brings us down. Mr. Smith, David, you've got an update on what this application entails. Please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. As you mentioned, applications at 8/21/2024 for plant. The purpose of the application is to zone the property to satisfy a condition of provisional consent. That's provisional consent B27/2024 plant that was heard by the West Grey Committee of Adjustment the past month. Provisional consent permits the severance of a new lot of approximately 1.2 hectares and to retain a lot of approximately 19 hectares. And again, the zoning is here as part of that initial consent. The property is designated rural and hazard in the County of Grey official plan with significant woodlands and other wetland constraints. Property is currently zoned A2 rural and natural environment. In terms of our circulation, we circulated the application to the standard West Grey agencies, including West Grey Public Works, Building and Fire, who have no concerns, who are just recommending standard conditions such as entrance permits and 911 signs. We circulated also to the County of Grey and to the County of Grey Planning Ecologist and to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority find the proposal to be acceptable, and I'll be speaking further to the County of Grey comments on the environmental impact study and some other recommendations. Maybe we'll ask Ashley if you bring up the PDF and we'll take a look and see specifically where we are in terms of the lot. We'll go to page 9, please, of 32 in the PDF. Page 9 shows the draft schedule. It would go along with the zoning schedule with the A2X is a holding number, the X for a holding number. That's not the right word. A holding place for the zoning number to come up in the upper left-hand corner. That is the lot to be severed, and then the A2Y is the lands to be retained, and that's just a plain zoning schedule. We're going down to the next page, please, Ashley. Page 10 shows you the proposed severed lot in relationship to the property in total. And we're going to go down to page 12, please. This schedule here is Appendix B from the Grey County official plan. The lands in green are significant woodlands as identified in the official plan. The little blue hatched areas on the diagram are other wetlands as mapped by the county official plan. Thank you, Ashley. As I mentioned, the application was circulated to various agencies, including the County of Grey. As I mentioned, the property contains or is adjacent to provincially significant wetlands. It has significant woodlands on the property, but as far as the county review is concerned, there is sufficient developable area on both the proposed and the retained lots in previously disturbed areas, in other words, outside retreat areas, such that a building could be erected, and as such, no requirement for an EIS is required in this particular case. County staff, however, did recommend that a condition of approval be that a holding provision be placed on the remainder of the natural heritage features on the severed and the retained land to ensure that an EIS is completed to the satisfaction of the County of Grey. Provided Grey County Planning Ecology staff comments are addressed, county planning would have no concerns with the application. So on this particular schedule here, what they were talking about is applying a H holding in the zoning, the West Grey zoning, to the areas in green and blue on the property. In terms of as the clerk has mentioned, the application notice of the meeting was circulated to neighboring property owners, and a sign was posted on the property. We received no public comments submitted as the date of the report or since the report was uploaded for your review on the West Grey website. We reviewed the application versus the Provincial Planning Statement 2024. As of October 20th of 2024, the new Provincial Planning Statement applies to all decisions that affect the planning matter. Section 3 of the Planning Act requires West Grey to have make a decision that affects planning and to be consistent with the Provincial Planning Statement. We reviewed a number of policies within the statement, including Policy 261, which allows for residential development in a rural area. And in particular, we took a look at Policy 4.1.5, which states that natural heritage features, such as significant woodlands, shall be protected for the long term, and the development within or adjacent to, that is within 120 meters of a significant woodland, shall be prohibited unless it has been demonstrated that there will be no negative impacts on the natural features of their ecological functions. That is the Provincial Planning Statement policy. It is the opinion of the Grey County Planning Ecology that an ecologist and an environmental impact study is not required, as there is sufficient land outside of the natural heritage features on the retained and several lots for development, the areas outside of the green. However, the Grey County Planning Ecologist does recommend that the zoning bylaw amendment place a H holding provision on all the natural heritage lands in the property, prohibiting development of any type until an EIS is completed or an exemption to an EIS is provided by the county. I disagree with the recommendation of the county planning ecologist. The County of Gray has recently started recommending that all municipalities in the county apply an H holding on lands that have natural heritage features such as significant woodlands, other wetlands, etc. The H holding will require every property owner that is subject to the H holding to prepare an EIS or to apply to the county planning ecology for an exemption for every type of development or site alteration, such as the replacing or the removal of fill, grading, excavating, anything that would change the landform and or natural vegetation characteristics of the property, and the erection of any building or structure regardless of size. Applying H holding across the municipality of West Gray, if we were to take a look at this in the bigger sense of the word, not just specifically for this property, would impact about 30,496 hectares of significant woodlands. That's about 34.5% of the municipality as a whole that would be placed with an H holding on it, prohibiting any type of lot grading and or building or structure with an EIS or an exemption to it. That is a sizable portion of this municipality. Any discussion of protecting and regulating development of lands that have been identified as natural heritage would be incomplete without recognizing private property rights and the rights of private property owners to develop their lands. This right is not absolute. It is limited through statutes such as the Planning Act, provincial planning statement, and zoning bylaws, through controls to limit negative impacts through property standards bylaws and the Municipal Act, and in the County of Gray through the County Forest Management Bylaw under the Municipal Act. We do have private property rights, but again, they are limited by various statutes and various bylaws. Since environmental protection is to the benefit of society, it is appropriate that society pay at least partially for this benefit through taxes rather than leave the financial burden to individual landholders. The county proposal for the H holding disproportionately financially impacts rural property owners without compensation by requiring the property owner to assume the full burden of the protection of the natural heritage feature, a feature that benefits all residents in West Gray, the County of Gray, and the province of Ontario. The county proposal disproportionately financially impacts small development proposals, such as the construction of a single dwelling or a new accessory building. Consultation with the county planning ecologist on whether an EIS is even required may come with a fee to the property owner. Cost to hire a consultant to prepare an EIS or scope the EIS are unknown, but can take 6 months to a year to complete. There's also no certainty that the county planning ecologist will accept or approve an EIS completed and or agree or approve any EIS recommendations. At the moment, removing an H holding will also incur an $800 West Gray fee as per the West Gray Consolidated Bylaw. Now, going back to the provincial planning statement, policy 4.1.5 of the provincial planning statement does permit development and site alteration within a natural heritage feature or within the 120 meters of the feature, provided it has been demonstrated there are no negative impacts on the natural heritage features or their ecological functions. Woodlands in the Gray official plan need to be a minimum of 40 hectares, 100 acres in size to be considered significant. Small developments such as a single house or a garage would typically have little to no impact on a feature that's 40 hectares in size, nor on its ecological function. The county should investigate a more nuanced approach to the protection of natural heritage features by concentrating reviews and EIS studies on larger developments, for example, multi-lot development, significant removal or destruction of interior woodland habitat, habitat loss due to new or expanded aggregate operations, golf course or campground developments. Larger scale development is where they should be targeting, I think, their interest in having an additional or expanded EIS. In that regard, it is again my opinion that the H holding should not be applied to this particular application, and that the zoning amendment as proposed by myself, by staff, is consistent with the provincial planning statement as provided in your package. We reviewed the application also against the County of Gray official plan. Gray official plan rural policies do allow for lot creation from an original 40 hectare parcel. This particular lot, Crown Lot 19, Concession 8, has been severed one time already. The creation of this one new lot would be well within the density limits of the official plan. Second of all, the official plan requires new lots to be at least 0.8 hectares in size and to generally have a maximum of 1:3 ratio of lot frontage to depth. And again, the proposed lot will meet the minimum lot area requirement. As I mentioned, generally an environmental impact study be required where developments proposed within the natural heritage features. In this particular case, the planning ecologist has waived the requirement for the EIS. Lastly, the official plan requires new lot creation to comply with the minimum distance separation formula. There are no livestock facilities within close proximity to this proposed lot. And overall, I'm of the opinion that the zoning amendment as proposed maintains the general intent and purpose of the Gray official plan. Municipality of West Gray zoning bylaw, currently these lands are zoned A2 a natural environment. The severed lot will have some deficiencies in minimum lot area. A requirement is 20 hectares, the proposed is 1.2 hectares, although it should be remembered that the West Gray bylaw also provides for smaller lot sizes once a lot is created through our other regulations. So it's not unusual to see severances of this nature don't meet the 20 hectares, but they are eligible to be under the other regulations or reduced lot regulations once they're created. So it may seem like a significant departure, 20 hectares to 1.2, but the way that the bylaw is set up, it just happens to take us through this particular route of recognizing a small proposed rural residential lot in that regard. Overall, I find that the reductions in the retained lot area, which is also slightly smaller at 19.04 versus the 20, and a smaller lot frontage of 110 meters versus the 122, but those small, relatively small differences would be in keeping with the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, and that overall, the zoning amendment does represent good planning. Therefore, and in consideration of staff report Z21 2024 plant, I recommend the council direct staff to forego including an H holding provision in the site-specific zoning bylaw for the property and to bring forward a bylaw to amend 37/2006 as it relates to the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Comments from the applicant? Is the applicant online?
Yes, he is.
There you are, Mr. Davidson. The floor is yours, good sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yeah, I'll be very brief on this. I don't have a whole lot to add to what David said. The severance itself was dealt with a couple weeks ago, as you guys will recall, because you approved it with the condition that this zoning bylaw amendment be approved as a condition. And yeah, it lines up with the official plan, the provincial policy statement. I should speak to the bit about the holding symbol. David and I have discussed this at length. Just a little bit of background. Before I filed this set of applications, I did speak with the county ecologist on its own or on their own to discuss this matter, and they had recommended that the holding symbol be attached to the area identified as significant woodland. So my application for zoning bylaw amendment reflects that. And then I since learned in speaking with David of his opinion on the matter. As you heard David say, the county recognizes the fact that there is a sufficient amount of land on both the severed and retained parcels to build outside of the woodland, if need be. But I will add this, of course, the owner, Mr. Plant, sure, he would prefer that the holding symbol not be attached to the zoning on either of the two properties. And there's no doubt that the future owner, whoever that will be, of the severed parcel, the smaller parcel, would prefer the same. I just don't want to end up at the Interior Land Tribunal this discussion. So that's really all I care to say about that, and I'll stay on for in case I have any questions asked. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. And next we'll go to the public, and I'm going to ask Ashley if there's anybody online at this point in time. Ashley, no? And is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this application? No. Okay. With that, is there anything, comments from the committee themselves? Mr. Hutchison? Doug? Yeah, so I find it interesting with this whole holding symbol. So the county is recommending it on all these lands that have significant woodlands. And we're recommending that not in this case. And I understand where you come from. It's interesting that in light of not these days that people complain about red tape, and to me, this is just another version of adding more red tape to applicants. But it's interesting that we're looking at amalgamating our planning at the county level. But I'm sort of curious, has there been other discussions, like, I'm sure this affects us, but it also affects the other 8 municipalities in our areas. There have been any discussions with the other municipalities that they may be resistant of applying this across the board? Like we're gonna maybe end up at a county planning model. How does that fit with where we're going here? Like I'm interested to know how this is all going to come about.
Yeah, it's a good question, and part of the discussion for any planning, moving planning to anywhere outside the municipality, part of that discussion has to be how that department will relate to the municipality. So it's my expectation, and I believe council's expectation would be that if anytime somebody's changing a policy within the municipality, that they would bring some type of report forward or some kind of discussion forward to council for the review, whether it's a legal issue or a municipal. If it's regulated and we bring it forward and say this is what's required, well, then that's what's required. But if it's something like this where there's no new legislation being brought forward by the province for this is legislation. It's just a different interpretation of that legislation by the person sitting in the chair. And my opinion, and if my position, if I was bringing something new policy forward that wasn't legislated, that council would have some discussion in that. And to date, we've asked county council or county planners, pardon me, to bring some of this forward to the local municipalities, and they've chosen not to do that to date. So this is our, I guess, way of our interpretation of it is that it's not required. David and I have had multiple discussions. I've also had discussions with other municipalities. Some municipalities see it our way. Some municipalities see it the county way. So there's no black and white answer. I can't give you a definite yes, it's required. That's why there's 2 interpretations. So in this case, it would be council's decision, I guess, to determine how they wanted to move forward with that. But without the county being here to provide their information, we can't speak to what they're asking or why they're asking for it.
So that being said, I'd be interested to know how, from our county reps, whether there's been any discussion at the county table regarding this situation. No. Not as of, certainly not as of yet. The discussion around that is, I think what you're looking for is it going to be total planning and interpretation at the county level. You're getting a little bit of offline here on what this really is talking about. And I'm just going to say, it's still in how that's going to work out. And we will be probably, as it moves forward, we're going to end up in some type of a hybrid. It's not going to be one place or both places. And it will be discussed at some point in time to be addressed. Go ahead. Yep. So my thoughts are, it sounds like the applicant's not really interested in getting into a legal battle over this, but I also think that somewhere along the line that this is going to end up at a land tribunal. And I think if our way I read our provincial government, they're very much against more red tape. I think in this case that the applicant would win. But whether we want to go there or not, that's questionable. So I think it's one of those things that's just going to have to be tested, I guess. Okay. Jeff. Or, sorry, comment on that, Carl.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So part of any consideration in by the staff level is not just what is required for the, I mean, if all we were looking at is, do we want to save some trees? I think everybody would be in agreement. Yes, let's, protect some trees. The issue is things that staff also have to consider are things like enforcement. And how are we going to enforce this holding provision? If a property goes in there and cuts down a tree, they're in defiance of the zoning. So that means the municipality would be required to enforce that somehow if we chose to. So currently in place right now, the county has a tree cutting bylaw in place that protects the tree to a certain extent, right? It allows for some development, not others. It provides requirements and they're required to enforce that. If we put this in our zoning bylaw, now the municipality is required to enforce that at a cost. And those are the things that we have to consider. And when we review these regulations, and understandably, maybe the county, when they review the regulations, they don't have to consider those things. And that's why maybe they come with a different opinion. And that's where some of those opinions differ. So without a specific black and white requirement that says we have to do it this way, these are the ultimate things that we have to take into consideration with any policy. And ultimately, myself and the planner, we decided together that we just don't believe that this is the right way to move forward, to put additional requirements on a property owner ultimately for no reason, in my opinion.
I think you hit it on the head there, Carl. There's already a tree cutting bylaw that's enforced by the county. There's in the wetlands areas and whatnot, if you were looking for a building permit, it's got to go through conservation in those zonings that are already mapped. There's so many layers that are already there. Yeah, the redundancy of this is, in my mind, redundant. Yeah. Mr. Shea.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Couple of questions and observations about that. One, around enforcement. We pass all sorts of bylaws that we don't enforce. And that just seems to be a thing that happens at local municipal government. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Putting, and I know we've joked with Councillor Hutchison about putting in speed reductions and stuff like that, and Doug's office involved. But we're never going to be able to enforce that. It's like, well, you don't not put in a law just because enforcement's difficult. You put in the law, you put in the speed reduction, you put in the holding pattern, whatever, because it's in your opinion, the right thing to do. Enforcement's another discussion. And you talked, Carl, about saving some trees. This holding patterns are applied to significant woodlands and wetlands, or is there a category of lands that holding patterns get applied to? Or is it just significant woodlands?
So in this particular case, it is significant woodlands that is quote unquote the target. The way that the provincial planning statement, however, is set up, theoretically, that can be expanded to natural heritage features, period. Natural heritage features in Grey County include significant valley lands and a number of other features. When it comes to things like talking about wetlands and so on and so forth, most of those are already zoned natural environment. They're not buildable, okay? Versus an area that is treed that just needs to have trees removed. So one has, the wet areas are typically well protected by natural environment zoning, by conservation authority regulation, because they're wet or unstable. Right? That's a natural heritage and a natural hazard feature in many respects. The other ones we're talking about are just these natural heritage features like the trees and the valley lands and a few other things that would be grouped into that have no restrictions on building other than they are natural heritage features. So, so the 34.5 is just significant woodlands. There may be additional percentages added to that for significant valley lands that aren't necessarily significant woodlands to it also. So, so again, wet areas are somewhat well protected already. It's just these treed upland areas where all you need to do is actually cut down the tree and dig your foundation that we're talking about.
So we've put approved applications with holding patterns before. Would that have been for things like wetlands or natural environment. Have we had holding patterns on significant woodlands before, or is this a first time? And that's why we're reacting this way.
This may be the first quote unquote larger scale application of it. And to give you a little bit more context, we've had any number of applications before this committee. And before, sorry, Committee of Adjustments, of which you're familiar with. For example, we did the plant rezoning. The plant property also has significant woodlands on it. There was no recommendation there for holding. Sorry. Right. Right. Lemke, sorry, the ones we done with recently. What I'm saying is that it seems to be a little bit all over the place in terms of where we're getting the comments from the county. And maybe it's a learning process there too. Okay. But other applications where we have significant woodlands on it, we have not seen a request for an H holding on it. So this is really the only one that's come through at the moment. There are other examples within the county of Gray where municipalities have been approached to apply whole scale VH holding on significant woodlands.
So we seem to be in a general policy debate at this point about the, private property rights versus, protecting the greater interest. And with this particular application, I'm not too concerned one way or the other. I'd be happy to take the recommendation of our planner, but I do think that we sort of need to dig a little deeper on this. So I don't know, staff has tried reaching out to the county and tried to get them to do some sort of a report explaining their thinking on this. If they have been unsuccessful, maybe council could send some sort of correspondence to the county saying that we'd like further discussion about this so that we can have a more full conversation, down the road. But I'll leave it there for now.
All right. The, Carl and the director and I have been chatting about this and in particular, the evolution of the planning ecology section of the county, right? Earlier this year, as you well remember, we agreed to use the county planning ecologist as for our review of environmental impacts statements and things like that. Personally, I think that office is still evolving in terms of how they operate and where they should be at and so on and so forth. But they haven't sat down really and put that on paper in some respects, or had a discussion with the municipalities that they provide the services to about how that works and what they're thinking of. What they're thinking is they evolve what policy or recommendations such as you're seeing here today. And that is something that the director has been in contact with the staff level, with the county saying, you really need to sit down and figure out as this new section about where you begin and end. What's your relationship with local staff? Who do you work for? Are you a county employee or are you hired by West Gray in some respects to work on applications? Who do you report to in that regard? Who is your higher authority? How do we put all this into perspective? So all those kind of questions have not been answered yet by the county in terms of this new planning service that they provided on the ecology side, and definitely something we would like to pursue with them, but we can't push them to do so, if you know what I mean. We can ask, and that's where we've been at the moment.
Thank you.
So did I understand you were willing to move the recommendation then? Jeff, thank you. Take that. Seconded by Mr. Townsend. Doug? So the recommendation on consideration staff report said a 2024 plant is on the floor. Any questions or comments on the motion? Call the question and all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Right. Thank you. And that will mean that we'll move down to our second zoning amendment today is at A22, 2024, 384663. I believe this one is in Gunnell Township as well too. So I'll declare the public meeting open for this zoning amendment. And Ashley, if you can give an update for anybody that is out there joining us virtually, please.
As noted at the opening of the meeting, public participation must be done through Zoom. Members of the public joining virtually wishing to participate in this portion may do so in one of two ways. If you have joined via phone, press star 9 to raise your hand. This will let us know that you would like to speak. Alternatively, star 9 can also be used to lower your hand. If you have joined virtually, you can either raise your hand by clicking the blue or yellow hand icon located in the bottom corner of your screen, or by sending a chat message to myself, Ashley Noble, Communications Coordinator, either stating that you would like to speak or what you would like read into the record on your behalf.
Thank you, Ms. Noble. I have some announcements I have to make. I'd like to remind everyone that the purpose of this public meeting is to receive input from the public. Every person who attends a statutory public meeting required under the Planning Act shall be given an opportunity to make representation in respect of the proposed bylaw. All submission materials for this application are available at the West Grey Municipal Office during regular business hours. Recent amendments to the Planning Act by the province now limit appeal rights on zoning bylaw amendment applications to the applicant, public bodies, and specified persons who made oral or written submissions to the municipality prior to a decision being made. Specified persons generally include energy, railroad, and telecommunications providers, as well as NAV Canada. This meeting is an essential part of the decision-making process. Feedback received will be considered in the decision of the West Grey Council. An explanation of how the public and agency comments factored into the decision will be included in the notice of passing of the bylaw. Where changes are made to the proposed bylaw after a holding of a public meeting, council will determine if any further notice will be given respecting the proposed bylaw, and the determination of council as to giving of further notice is final and not subject to the review in any court, no matter the extent of the change made in the proposed bylaw. Thank you. And comments from the clerk. Jamie?
Thank you, Mayor Eccles. Through you, notice of this public meeting was circulated to the prescribed bodies posted on the subject property and mailed to all properties within 120 meters of the subject property in accordance with the Planning Act. Anyone wishing to provide verbal comments at this public meeting is asked to sign the sign-in sheet located on the speaker's table. The personal information collected at this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Planning Act. The information collected will be used to complete the zoning bylaw amendment process and will form part of the public record. Questions about this collection should be addressed to me, the Director of Legislative Services / Clerk. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Grey on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the Municipality of West Grey, care of the Director of Legislative Services / Clerk.
Thank you, Jamie. And now I'll turn to Mr. Smith. This is an overview of the Planning and Development Department on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As mentioned, ZA 22-2024, application by M. Bauman. Purpose of the zoning amendment application is to amend the A2 rural zone to permit an on-farm diversified use. The zoning would permit a shop with a gross floor area of 668 meters squared with the entire OFDU footprint, which is the shop, a power generation room, outdoor storage, parking, loading area, covering approximately 6,219 meters squared. At this time, the on-farm diversified use would manufacture insulated concrete forms, ICF forms used in the construction of foundations, though the site-specific zoning would permit dry industry use as a general land use as opposed to specifically ICF forms. In this particular case, the closest residential dwelling is approximately at 100 meters from the OFDU shop itself. An existing driveway is to be removed and a new entrance driveway constructed to the west of the current entrance. I'll ask Ashley, we can go to page 25 of the planning report, please. On screen is a close-up of the proposed site plan for the property. The area in the red is the area to be zoned in and of itself, with the proposed shop, a heavy red line. The shop area shows a buffer, proposed power room, proposed loading areas, a number of buildings to be removed, demolished from the property, a new driveway in blue coming in off of the concession road, and the existing house in the bottom kind of right-hand corner with a possible future expansion of the house itself. And then the back, moving towards the back behind the OFDU, not part of the application on the agricultural lands would be proposed new barn and new sheds on the property. If we go next picture, please. What we've done in this picture is pulled back and showing the OFD, on-farm diversified use in relationship to neighboring property owners. So you mentioned the closest residential dwelling is immediately across the road to the south, about 100 meters from the shop. And then the other distances you can see labeled on the air photo, everything from 383, 396 meters to barns or to other houses in the area. So again, the closest residential dwelling in this particular case is immediately across the road to the south, and then one a little further over to the southwest, also on the south side of the concession road. The lot is municipally known as 384663 Concession 4 Glen Elg. The lot is 40.9 hectares, about 101 acres in size, with 404 meters of frontage on Concession 4. It is pretty much an original crown lot in terms of its size, with 100 acres in this particular case. There's an existing house and 3 accessory buildings and barns on the property. The application does propose removal of 2 of the structures and the construction of the proposed OFDU plus a new barn and new shed, as I mentioned. All of the structures would be in close proximity to the existing house. Most of the lot outside of the area there is either farmland or forested. We circulated the application to various internal departments, Westgrae Public Works, Westgrae Building, and Westgrae Fire. Public Works and Westgrae Building have no particular concerns, although it's been noted both by Fire and by Westgrae Building that buildings over 600 square meters in size would require on-site fire, and a fire route access route would also be required over a certain size of building. It only hits that target when you get over that size. Below that size, you don't need to provide on-site fire, and you don't need to provide fire access. That will be determined whether or not they need both true fire access and true on-site fire protection when the building permit is applied for. So if the building permit comes in below the number, then it's not required. If the number comes in at the number or above the number, then a fire suppression and a fire access driveway would be required. A fire access driveway is basically what you're looking at, but it does have some curves so that the fire truck can get in more easily than if it had sharp 90-degree angle turns. That's the difference between fire access and not. The roadway or the driveway proposed is relatively close to that at the moment, but it still would need to be taken a look at building permit stage if it was over the size. We circulated the application to the County of Grey. The County of Grey Planning Ecologist has no concerns. An environmental impact study was not required for the application. Circulated to Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and there were no concerns from the Conservation Authority either. As mentioned by the clerk, we did circulate the notice of the public meeting to the public and posted a sign on the property. As of the day of the writing of the report, we had received no comments from the public on the application. We reviewed the application versus the provincial planning statement 2020. As of October 20th, 2024, the new provincial planning statement applies to all decisions in respect to the exercise of any authority on a planning matter. Section 3 of the Planning Act requires decisions affecting a planning matter by the municipality of Westgrae to be consistent with the policy statement issued under the Act. In this particular case, this lot is designated as rural and hazard in the County of Grey official plan. It does have other constraints, such as aggregate resource area and significant woodlands. In this particular case, the OFDU, on-farm diversified use, will be located on lands designated as rural. Rural lands in the provincial planning statement means lands which are located outside of settlement areas and which are outside of prime agricultural areas. Policy 261D identifies a range of permitted uses on rural lands, including on-farm diversified uses, agriculture uses, and agriculture-related uses. On-farm diversified uses in the provincial planning statement means uses that are secondary to the principal agricultural use of the property and are limited in area. On-farm diversified uses include, but are not limited to, home occupations, home industries, and other uses that produce value-added agricultural products. Proposed manufacturing shop is classified as an on-farm diversified use and is permitted in a rural area. The on-farm diversified use will be located on a 40.9 hectare agricultural parcel, and it would be secondary to that agricultural use in terms of its size. The proposed use must also be sustainable from a service level and infrastructure. In this particular case, The OFDU will not require any special infrastructure and would be considered unusual for a rural property. Individual private well and water supply and on-site septic system can be provided to it. Garbage and recycling services. Regular residential garbage would be available at the property line. Any waste itself from an industrial, from the OFDU itself, and the industrial side would have to be dealt with by the property owner, and it does not go into the municipal stream. In terms of stormwater, we don't see any problems at all. We have more than sufficient size. Fire protection and access, we did mention that already about the requirements for on-site fire protection and fire access if over a certain size. In terms of lighting, dark sky friendly lighting would be required if there's any external lighting proposed. Most of the property, including the area for the farm diversified use and all of the surrounding lands, are within the identified aggregate resource area. We are required to take a look at protecting those resources, except in certain circumstances where the resource use would not be feasible or that the proposed land use or development would serve a greater long-term public interest. In this particular case, the OFDU is not a sensitive land use in terms of putting a house, for example, in the middle of a prime aggregate area. There are multiple residential dwellings in this particular area that would also have an impact on the establishment of any aggregate resource or pit in this particular area. And therefore, we don't believe that the OFDU will have any impact on the aggregate resource itself. As I mentioned, there is significant woodlands on the property, natural heritage feature, and generally within 120 meters of a natural heritage features such as significant woodlands and EIS would be required. In this particular case, as mentioned, the county planning ecologist has no concerns with the application, and an environmental impact study was not required. I am of the opinion that the proposed zoning amendment is consistent with the provincial planning statement. We also reviewed the application against the county agree official plan. The lot is designated as rural and hazard, as I mentioned, aggregate resources and significant woodland constraints on the property. The on-farm diversified use again will be located in the lands designated rural. Policy 522 agricultural development policies does allow for the establishment of an on-farm diversified use on lots comprising 20 hectares of land or more. This property is larger than that. A new on-farm diversified use is regulated in area by the county official plan. In rural areas on 20 hectares of land or greater, an on-farm diversified maximum use is the lesser of 2% of the total size of the property, or a maximum combined area of the use of 8,000 square meters, and that includes laneways, parking, et cetera, within that. We reviewed the application also against the Ministry of Environment and Conservation Parks guidelines for land use. In this particular case, we take a look at the setbacks between industrial uses and sensitive land uses, such as residential uses. In this particular case, we do find that the guideline D6, which sets out that this type of application or this type of industrial facility would be considered to be a class 1 land use, would have a minimum setback to a sensitive use, such as a residence of 70 meters. In this particular case, the on-farm diversified use would meet the setback requirement. It's approximately 100 meters itself from the shed or from the building itself to the nearest sensitive building. Sewage disposal, potable water, noise, and again, the environmental, we see no particular issues with the county official plan. In terms of size, the OFDU will be limited to 668 meters squared, which is 10.8% of the combined area, and a maximum combined area of 6219, well within the requirements of the county official plan requirements. Traffic, road access will be maintained via concession 4. There may be some increased road traffic from deliveries to and shipping from the OFDU, but this is not expected to significantly tax the road system. Rescue Public Works is no concern over the potential traffic generated nor issues with the current construction of the roadway. We did mention that the driveway itself is to be moved further to the west. There is some poor sight lines with the existing driveway, so moving to the west would improve sight lines for entrance and exit from the property. As I mentioned, we also talked about fire protection and access, and again, that will be dealt with during the building permit stage if required in terms of both the driveway and on-site fire. Overall, I am of the opinion that the proposed zoning amendment does maintain the general intent and purpose of the county agree official plan. The municipality of West Grey zoning bylaw, we're zoned A2 rural. The West Grey bylaw does allow for home industries already on A2 zone lands. Home industry means an occupation or business conducted for gain or profit as a secondary use of the main permitted uses. Section 614 of the bylaw does go further by providing examples of uses such as welding shop, machine shop, custom workshop, furniture fabrication, assembly, repair, tool and repair shops, small engine repair, Those are various examples provided within our bylaw of things that can be done already within the home industry zoning on the property as of right, if they don't even need a zoning to do those particular things. However, the county official plan does allow expanded list of the particular uses, such as sawmill, welding, workshop, manufacturing, and fabrication. In this particular case, the expanded land use or the permitted uses didn't match with our current list of uses. So the zoning bylaw is why they're coming forward in order to match up the ICF or dry industrial use with that particular use. If it would have been one of the other uses, for example, machine shop or a welding shop or custom workshop or assembling and repair, they would have been able to do that under the home industry provisions of the zoning bylaw without coming to the municipality of Westgrade for zoning. In this particular case, we're recommending that the industrial dry be applied to the property as opposed to a very specific type of land use. The dry industrial use would allow for fabrication of raw materials and services as long as it doesn't require significant water supply. In other words, dry in the processing itself, as in they don't use processed waters or they don't discard of processed waters as our dry industrial use. Overall, we reviewed the application actually against also the home industry regulations. And for most cases, the application would have met it except for a few examples, which is again why we're here for the zoning amendment. In this particular case, the zoning amendment would, one, limit the location of the OFDU on the property to a location immediately to the west of the existing house. That limit the home industry total area to a maximum combined area of 6219 meters squared. Limit the home industry shop size to 668 meters squared. Allow industrial use dry as permitted use. Require dark sky friendly lighting if any is to be put up. Require parking, storage, and loading areas to be located within the home industry total area. Require a tree buffering area screening the OFDU from the roadway, and limit advertising to a non-illuminating sign with a maximum size of 16 square feet. The OFDU will not be placed under site plan control. The site-specific zoning would be sufficient to regulate the use in this particular case. Overall, I am of the opinion that the proposed zoning amendment maintains the general intent and purpose of the Westgrade zoning bylaw and represents good planning. And we recommend that the committee forward to the council a bylaw to authorize the passing of an amendment for the application. Thank you.
Thank you, David. With that, I'm going to ask, is there any comments from the applicant? Oh, we don't have the applicant in the audience. Online, Ashley? No? Okay. Comments from the public. Ashley, is there anybody online who wishes to make a comment? Anyone? Nope, not seeing anybody online. Anyone in the audience want to make? If you could, sir, I'd just ask you to, because we're recording this, give your name for the to the clerk, and the gray button there will turn on that microphone, and anything you say can and will be held against you. No.
Again.
For the-
So am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Ron Goldsmith. My wife and I live, oh, the map's disappeared. We are across the road from the proposed amendment and half a lot to the west. So if I got the distances correct, we're something in the order of 300 meters from the proposed shop. Want to make some comments about procedure first, and I didn't quite anticipate this when we came here today, but first of all, my wife and I did not receive any information from the municipality about this amendment whatsoever. We saw the sign, not such a big sign, on the roadway, and learned about the public hearing through that. We got some general information from the proponent, Martin Baumann, or his son. I'm not sure which is actually the proponent here. And he was, I guess I should be sitting, shouldn't I? He was kind enough to give us a general sense of what was being proposed, and we certainly give him credit for that, and we're grateful that he did. It was the most general sort of information, though. It was to be a shop, no size being given. He wasn't quite sure what they were going to produce in it, but it might be insulation or something like that. Having seen the notice on the roadway, I came to the municipal offices about 3 weeks ago to ask for more information and was told that there was none and that I couldn't have it anyway. And I paraphrased, but that's pretty close to what I was told. I get that there is a moment at which information goes public and, there's a process to be followed. But we're a little taken aback to arrive here today. Clearly, the assumption being that we would be better informed about this than we are. And I submit that the fact that we are not better informed is not our fault. So things happen. We get that. There's a postal strike that could easily have affected the distribution of information. Might be lots of other reasons, but we came here today, not having any information at all, except for what Mr. Baumann told us. That's not quite true. It did give the size information on the sign. And being sufficiently green at the procedural aspects of this, unaware that this could actually be decision day for the process. So we're a little gobsmacked, to use a technical term. Having said that, we know that a zoning bylaw application change, that didn't come out right, but I think you know what I mean, is largely a technical decision. It's not a matter of, popular opinion and voting it yes or no. But clearly there are neighborhood implications for this, and we want you to understand that we are concerned, not necessarily opposed, but concerned. We get that it's a, quote, home industry, but it's a pretty large scale home industry. Not quite sure that we have an easy time accepting that this will be a secondary thing to agriculture on the property. This looks like a pretty large scale industry to us. Having said that, our concerns may not be concerns for this council, but in that case, I would like some guidance about how we do handle our concerns. And there are three things. They're simple, and you know what they are already. Noise. We don't have the faintest idea what sort of operation this is, nor have we been able to find out. And you may say it's none of our business. Well, technically speaking, that may be correct, but we do live right across the road, slightly kitty corner. Noise is a concern. Will it be releasing chemical pollutants into the air? We have no clue. Don't know what the inputs are, don't know what the outputs are. Where do we find out? Or is it none of our business? And traffic. I'm pleased to hear that the roads department is not concerned about the amount of traffic that this might generate. That suggests to me that there is not going to be a huge amount of additional traffic, and that would certainly be a relief. I particularly hope that that means there won't be a lot of additional traffic between about early March and late April, when that 1 kilometer stretch of county road of concession 4 is, I suspect a lot of you know it already. It's jolly during spring melt, and the thought of large trucks going in and out is fairly difficult to imagine, actually. So we find ourselves a bit stuck here. It is not our intention to just come in and oppose something for the sake of opposing it. We're here to say we have concerns that we think are reasonable neighborhood concerns. We have been unable to get answers to the questions we've asked, partly from Mr. Bauman, who I suspect only himself has a fairly general, I don't expect engineering details from him. My visit to council offices was not productive. I asked for further information. They brought someone from an office in the building department, and I'm not going to name names because I have no wish to embarrass the person at all. But the message was that even if the person had more information at that time, they couldn't provide it to us. So I'm not sure that I have anything to say that you will find useful here today, except for the fact that living across the road from this, we have a whole bunch of questions with no answers. Maybe these are questions that aren't West Grey questions, but who? Ministry of Environment? Somebody? Who can we ask questions of? Who can talk to us about whether this is going to be a major noise factor? Who can talk to us about whether there will be chemical inputs and outputs? So, Mr. Mayor and council and staff members from West Grey, this isn't quite the presentation I expected to be making when we came. There are many things here that have surprised me today. And I simply leave it with you that I think our concerns, not opposition, maybe we would be opposed if we had the details, but our concerns, I think, are reasonable, and we would like some guidance. So, thank you. I appreciate your time and your attention.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I would like to make a comment.
Okay, we have somebody online, Ashley. If you could give us your name, please, and yes, then proceed.
My name is Desiree Pinkney, and I am the landowner and permanent resident closest to this proposal, directly across the road. And I'd like to start by just saying that I agree with everything that Ron has shared today, and also that I feel like a good public process, has not occurred to date. I also received no information about the project, about the proposal. There are no studies provided in the link for extra documentation. I share the same concerns about traffic, and I would say that actually I don't think that potentially that this is consistent with the infrastructure that's in place to service our road and this area right now. I mean, I know that we've heard there's no issues with regards to traffic, but we've been provided no information as to how that opinion has been made. So like how many trucks are going to be going to the facility and leaving. I think, it's completely reasonable to expect a bit of a traffic impact study, to expect a noise assessment. I am directly downwind from this subject proposal. And I can tell you right now that noise and odor has already been an issue with some things outside of normal farm practices quite recently. So that's a huge concern of mine. And I would also say that even with regards to the information that has been provided to date, like the map is completely ineligible. I cannot read the map. It is not clear. So I'd like to be provided a map in a higher resolution so I'm actually able to see the proposal in detail, and more information on sort of how these opinions about impact to the road and traffic, and even stormwater management, like how many parking spaces are we talking about? Is the facility going to have stacks? Is there going to be air pollution? Does that need to be regulated by MECP? And just also share the same sentiment that I wasn't expecting, that there would be a decision made today. And so I'd like to just state that I do oppose the council making a decision with regards to this application at this time. Because, we haven't been given adequate information as the public and as potentially affected. I think there are a number of issues to address with regards to, whether this does meet the overall compatibility of the rural landscape.
Whether you're froze again, Ms. Pinkney, or
No, I think
oh, there you are. Okay.
I think
Did
that
freeze
that's
there
it.
for just a little bit, so thank
Okay.
you.
And I have submitted written comments as well.
Okay. There was a number of questions posed there. Does staff have any comments on that?
You start with the big picture. We are creatures of the province of Ontario, as you well know. And the province of Ontario provides us with a provincial planning statement. That provincial planning statement says in rural and agricultural areas, on-farm diversified uses are permitted. And whether or not you believe that the size of the building is secondary to the farm or not, in terms of whether or not they make more money off of one than the other, we have that issues with all of our developments in that regard, where you actually could in some years make less off of corn than you make off of a steel drum, right? But in this particular case, in terms of the size of the land use and so on and so forth, it is obviously far secondary to the agricultural use in the property. And it doesn't mean we don't have farmers who work off farm, who make maple syrup and everything else that don't have on-farm diversified uses. So provincial policy and the County of Grey official plan both allow on-farm diversified uses, and manufacturing, such as what's proposed here, is one of those categories within that overall, and it is well within the sizes required by the county official plan. So I believe in in good state there. The other part we use is that we do take a look at neighboring land uses. And the province does again provide us some very basic guidelines in terms of sensitivity and compatibility between uses such as industrial and other sensitive uses, residential. In this particular case, since there is no quote unquote emissions, there's no smokestack, okay, that we think of with, say, a steel plant or things like that, that we don't have large outdoor operations kind of going on that we would have in an aggregate pit. So the land use itself falls on the low end of the category, which is a class 1 industrial use, where by far the majority of the noises and so on and so forth are contained within a building, and there's no fugitive emissions such as from a paint booth or from a smokestack or things like that. So it falls in the class 1, which gives us a 70-meter suggested setback from the province from the MECP. The other aspects about how do we regulate buildings, how do we regulate land uses, such as do they use chemicals, do they dispose of their waste properly? In many respects, that is really outside of our purview, okay? If they require permits from the MECP for various land uses, then it is their obligation to get those in order to operate a business. If they're required to dispose of waste in a particular means using a particular type of waste disposal company, that is their requirement to do so. All we can tell you is that we are recommending a dry industrial use, which means no processed waters would be used in a dry industrial use other than a standard bathroom. And in some cases, the recycling of water. So for example, if you had carrots being washed through an on-farm diversified use, we would ask that the on-farm water be recycled as opposed to disposed of, but that's not the case here. So we don't have those kind of external emissions in terms of the dry industrial use. In terms of circulation and so on and so forth, we will have to say that the application was put in the mail, but probably just before they went on strike. So, and we weren't able to control it after that, after the fact in that regards. So I can't tell you whether or not they're going to show up in their mailboxes in the next week or two, but we did follow the requirements of the act in that regard. And as you have heard, we did put up a sign that the West Gray has been using for a number of years on the property, which certainly, as you can see, works because people are here providing their comments to you about this particular application. The road structure and so on and so forth, West Gray does have low limits on a number of roads in the spring. Everybody's expected to adhere to that, regardless if you are running an on-farm diversified use or other type of business. The only exemptions, I believe, are for animal transport in and out and for milk haulage, for example. So otherwise, it's expected to meet that requirement. This is a rural agricultural area. And yes, there's a number of houses around, but we still take a look at it primarily from the rural and agricultural side is why we apply those particular policies to it. Thank you.
Okay, and I will just add, there was a question, I think, from either Ron or Ms. Pinckney, I'm not sure. It was on employees and parking spots. I believe it shows in the diagram that there'll be 3 parking areas in and around the shop itself. But there's an employee restriction to 2 employees that would be able to work that don't live on site. Am I correct in that, David? I think I am.
So in terms of parking areas, we don't assign a number of spots. We do take a look at the size because we do have a standard size, but we do make sure there's parking available and we do make sure there's a loading area required and that all of that is within the approved on-farm diversified use total area. And they did provide a site plan to show that. Yeah, some of the diagrams we use don't translate very well to our website, which is why we do ask people, and I will apologize to whoever's come in that received an inappropriate response from staff in regards to being able to take a look at diagrams of the application forms, and to council and to the public. All of the Planning Act application forms provided are available to the public when we have them. The only thing that is somewhat limited is the report that goes to council. The report that goes to council will go to you first before it is posted on a website or before it's available to the public. That is the rule for that. So it may be ready, but we would not disseminate that particular report until it's at least in your email box or whatever delivery means you have before it goes to anybody else. But everything else in the report and the application is available, and we do try to post what's available online. And if not, it's available here in the office. And again, my apologies to anybody who had ran into any kind of problems here in the office in terms of accessing the application forms.
And the employees?
Employees. We can, so the current home industry does restrict the number of total employees. We hadn't proposed that here. We take a look at sometimes the size. If you only have a certain size, there's really only a certain number of employees after you get the amount of equipment into a place, if you know what I mean, right? So we have not gone through that, and some of the reasons why is, and some councilors have mentioned this already, rightly or wrongly, is that we're not going to go there every Monday, Wednesday, once or twice a year and count the number of employees. We would prefer to regulate things which are easier to do, such as making sure we have parking, making sure we have loading, and regulating the size of the building, as opposed to counting that we're only supposed to have 2 people on site, and for God forbid, there's 3. So we leave kind of that up to the size of the building and the machinery and the requirements to regulate the number of employees, as opposed to saying, yeah, you run a convenience store, you can only have 2 people, no more than that. rather than the other way around, the things that are easier for us to regulate. That's where we ended up with no numbers in our proposed bylaw to you.
All right. Anybody else from the public?
I would just like to follow up on some of that. So like if I'm looking at
One
the
more.
PPI, you know, on rural lands and municipalities, we should be encouraging and promoting development that can be sustained by rural service levels. And I still am yet to understand the details of that assessment in terms of what this means, particularly for traffic. There's been, you know, no details provided about what that means in terms of trucking and loading and all of those things. So I'm just not clear that like an adequate assessment regarding how this is compatible with rural servicing levels, with overall compatibility with the rural landscape, and whether a traffic impact study is going to be required, and whether a servicing or noise study will be required, because those are things that are mentioned with regards to on-farm diversified uses in the Grey County official plan.
I guess the simple answer is no, we will not be requiring a noise study. We will not be requiring a traffic study. When we take a look at traffic, of course, we hope every business in the municipality is wildly successful and they have a problem and have to move into a more suitable place. But if we were to, for example, establish a dairy farm here or a chicken farm here, we'd be having trucks in and out in terms of traffic. And overall, considering the size of the building and so on and so forth, and its potential output is not going to be a mega factory. Therefore, the road structure in that regard, in terms of, yes, there'll be more trucks, but not in the sense that we believe that it's going to be an over bearing in terms of the road structure itself, or you know, 10 trucks, 15 trucks a day. We have more problems with our aggregate operations than we do with our on-farm diversified uses in terms of trucking and in terms of road structure, and also in terms of our animal agriculture, where we have milk trucks coming in and out on a daily or bi-daily basis and so on and so forth in that regard. And we don't see it to be any more than that in terms of truck traffic or impact to the road structure itself. In terms of, again, the noise, we use the setbacks in that regards. In terms of noise, we're not saying you're not going to hear anything. We're not saying that at all. We're saying is whether or not you are unduly influenced to a total negative effect in your use and enjoyment of a piece of property. Just like we have agricultural smells, we also have noises in the countryside, and we have dust from combines and so on and so forth that happen, and you hear it sometimes and sometimes you don't. In this particular case, again, with the setback of 100 meters and a little bit of screening, we believe that the noise itself will be well within any particular parameters somebody would establish, and that most of these operations do take place inside of a building. Although in the summer months, yes, you could have open garage doors and so on and so forth, that you may hear things across the countryside, but not to the effect that living right next to an ongoing industrial operation will totally remove your ability to enjoy your property.
Well, I think without the noise study that might not be accurate with the way that sound travels here. And if I'm correct that I heard you say there's going to be 10 to 15 trucks a day, I really question and disagree with the notion that this road can support that. I mean, sometimes we're barely able to get to, you know, either paved road on either side of the concession as is. And I would just raise while we're here that probably council should be looking at changing the speed limit then, because the sightline is also not going to be great, particularly if you're coming east to west for where the proposed driveway is. I was just almost in a head-on collision there the other day. There's been horrible accidents outside my driveway, which is going to be directly across from the new entrance. So that's another concern. So I'd say, like, based on what I'm hearing, just to put it on the record that I do oppose this at this time. And I do feel like I will be, you know, it will have serious effects on the ability of me to enjoy my property based on the way that sound and smells travel. So I would have loved to see some site plan control here. You know, we could have been looking at things like berms, additional tree rows, things like that, you know, to help with some of those issues. But just put it on the record for proceeding to decision, so that it's clear, I do oppose.
My interpretation, and I'm only going to just say from the chair, my interpretation was, I think that what Mr. Smith said, there will not be 10 to 15 trucks a day from what we understand with the proposal. It would be more like what we have seen at farm activities, where there would be 2 to 3, 4 trucks a week. That's in and out.
I think that's the kind of information that, like we're looking for as neighbors. And I kind of go back to this public process for this particular application has been flawed. That may not be the fault of the municipality, but I feel like we should be provided additional information, including a clear map, in order to be better prepared to speak at this meeting and to, have our concerns heard before a decision is made.
Oh, that's what this is, under the Planning Act. This is what we're here for, is to hear the concerns and use those in making the decision-making process, as I had said earlier. Thank you. Okay. Any further comments from anyone in the gallery? Council, or sorry, committee, how do you want to deal with this going forward? Jeffrey?
I
Comments?
just wanted to clarify, this is not the final decision-making process in this application, is it? This is a recommendation to prepare a bylaw which would be addressed at a future meeting,
Correct.
to which people would be welcome to attend.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Correct in that, Jamie? Procedurally? Clerk?
Through Miracles, that is correct. Although I will just note that the public opportunity for participation in a council meeting is limited to the comment period whereby they would speak for 2 minutes to an agenda item. If council moves forward with recommending that the bylaw be brought forward, there is still that final step, but that's the direction that we're taking essentially.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hutchison. Oh,
Yeah, not so much a question, just a couple comments. We understand your concerns as people live in the country. You have some good questions. I agree, and it's unfortunate that the information wasn't out there, wasn't given to you in a proper manner. Maybe we can do better on that. I know there is a restriction on how many meters away from the property that notification is given us. It was 120 meters that the notices are posted within that area. So if you're outside that area, you wouldn't get the information. But it's unfortunate that if you came to the office that you didn't get information that you were asking for. Maybe it was a technical thing. I'm not really sure, but I think that's important that you get the information. The mail strike obviously didn't help us. So, maybe there's something in the mail that would have clarified some of your questions. But the fortunate or unfortunate thing is, however you look at it, that in the country, we do have more and more of these on-farm diversified uses, especially with the Mennonite community. And I'm not sure if that's the case in this case, but I suspect by the name that it is. So we do see that quite a bit. I think going forward that if there are concerns, talking to your neighbors would definitely would help. But based on what our planners suggesting, that we've gone through the process, and they feel our staff feels that they've handled most of the issues and whatnot. Not saying going forward that there won't be issues, but we deal with them as they come along, I guess. So hopefully this will go forward and it'll all work out for you and the best it can.
okay. Please, yep, go ahead, please. Use the microphone. Thank you. I'll allow.
It's just a simple question, and that is notification of the neighbors is,
Can I get your name first?
oh, Blaine Horsley.
Thank you.
Notification of the neighbors, I understand would be done property to property, not shop proposed to neighboring property, right?
Be correct, it'll be from the, I
So,
believe it's from the edge of the property line, anyone that's 120 meters from that
yeah,
edge of the property.
so that's a farm width. And both these property owners are directly across from that farm width. So they should both have received full information.
Yes. Okay. Any? One more, Ron, go ahead. Very brief. Again, use the microphone, please.
Thank you for indulging me one more time. I want to pick up the comment about speaking with our neighbors. I do give Martin Bauman real credit for coming and giving us a general sense of what was coming. And I think he would be very amenable to a discussion, except for the fact that he doesn't live here. We have no way to talk to him, which is part of the, except, by chance meeting, which doesn't happen all that often. That's part of the difficulty we've had getting information. But I do have one more question, if I could. One bit of information I did get when I came to the municipal offices, and I just want to test that this is correct, is that an industry of this sort would be restricted to operation during the term that was used was normal business hours, whatever that is taken to mean. Was that correct information? Thank you.
Look to staff.
I don't, yeah, the municipality has a noise bylaw, but we don't regulate business hours. So if you wish to run your ice cream plant, your steel plant, your your dry industrial, your restaurant 24 hours a day, I don't believe we have a bylaw to do so. We do have, of course, a noise bylaw for everybody to apply to, but we don't regulate business hours on any type of business, industrial, commercial, or recreational.
Aggregate.
Aggregate? Well, that may be done by the province in terms of their operations rather than our,
Well,
I
It's
sorry,
usually in the agreement.
in the agreement.
You know, 5 days until noon on Saturdays or something like that. That's about the only one that I can think of that meets a requirement of hours of use. When they can start in the morning, when they run in the daytime. But yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay. Please go to the mic. And I'm not going to.
We've been on our property.
Name first.
Oh, Adele Goldsmith.
Yeah.
Wife of Ron. We've been on our property since 1987. We have a MIFTIP program. We are doing everything we can to make our property environmentally positive. We are now in our 70s. And if this proposal goes through, I seriously doubt we are going to be able to sell our property for anything like the market value. We've already got turbines beside us. If this proposal goes through, as it is right now, it could completely destroy our financial future. I know that probably doesn't mean much. It's an emotional thing, but for us, it's also a financial thing. We do not have a property because of what we have done with it to promote the environmental aspect of it. It is not one that would be wanted by farmers. And when Desiree was talking about the rural, I can't remember the exact word she meant, but she was talking about the rural environment and whether this industry was consistent with it. To me, that is a very important thing. And I'm going to ask you, please, will you delay a decision until there is some opportunity for us to at least look at what this is going to mean to us for our futures, what we are going to be able to find out, what we are going to be able to live with and what we aren't going to be able to live with, and what it is going to mean for us in terms of if we are in a situation where we have to sell and can't. So at this point, I'm not asking you to say no, I'm just asking you for some time to give all of us, including the neighbors that are just on either side of us, a chance to get more information about this and deal with it in such a way that will benefit everybody. I have to say, what's the big fat hurry? He has rented the property out to the house part of it out for more than 10 years now. He has been farming cattle on it. As Ron said, he's never there. I don't see why this has to be rushed. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, that's it for public comment. Anything further from council, from the committee? Any other questions? Councillor Name, Joyce?
And just following up with our last comments here, to ask for deferral, I don't know, like, what would that timeline look like for these residents to find out more information? So I'm just kind of governed by, you know, if everything meets the requirement as our planners outlined, we have our obligations, but then on the other part of it, as an obligation to our residents, what kind of a timeline they're looking for to get their information. And, you know, they may not find it and we defer it, and we need to kind of know what that time frame's going to look like as well. So I don't know what the rest of council thinks about it, but maybe we ask for a deferral for the end of January, but no longer. Is that possible? I don't know if the clerk, if that's permittable, or how we handle that.
That sounds like a procedural thing, and I'll turn to the expert of procedure. Mr. Reckensweiler.
Through your miracles, if council wants to put forward a motion to defer a decision on this matter until the January meeting, that is something that you can entertain.
David or Carl?
Yeah, certainly, as the clerk has mentioned, your purview is your purview. If you're going to entertain such, be beneficial to staff to know, what am I supposed to do with it, if you know what I mean, right? What are you asking for? Are we deferring it so that somebody has a chance to look at the applications? Certainly, well, by all means. If you're asking that studies be done, et cetera, within that, that's obviously a very different reason for the deferral. The coming back, as the clerk has also mentioned, this has been the public meeting about what the expectations are of council in terms of those who've looked at the file or looked at the paperwork. And I will tell you honestly that what's available in your package That's the application. We provided everything to you that we've got, which is a standard application that we've dealt with before in terms of submissions. So, yeah, so if you are going to entertain some, we would certainly request if you can give us some guidance on anything that you would be looking for. Thank you.
Doug?
Would it be possible to have the applicant come forward and explain, give us some more information on the type of business that he's proposing? Like it's fairly vague in terms of what he is really going to produce in this shop. Is it possible to have him at the next meeting to give us more information?
So the application did come forward with ICF, insulated concrete form manufacturing. That's written in the application. Insulated concrete form manufacturing, if you're not familiar with, is the styrofoam together with the ties that join two pieces of styrofoam together, then used in basement foundations, for example. That's actually what they're interested in. We don't say to a person, however, that, oh, by the way, downtown, you can have a convenience store. That's it. Right? We need to allow for some adaptation kind of going on. So what we proposed to you was the dry industrial use as opposed to saying you can only make steel tanks. That's it. No, we took a look at the impact of potential dry industrial and say if that's appropriate, which allows them for businesses to evolve if required. So downtown, we allow for retail uses as opposed to a convenience store. So here, the application did specifically propose or mention ICF foundation, concrete forms, but we're not going to go there and make sure that's the only thing they're making.
I take it wouldn't be much different than if somebody come in to do a building and they were going to feed beef cattle. You wouldn't restrict it to Black Angus, Western only. You know, I think it's dry uses, as David said, Doug. Yeah, that's limiting in what it is. Yeah. Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
I just think it would have been interesting if the applicant had been here, then maybe some of the questions about noise, for example, could have been answered. The questions about byproducts like pollution, what do they do with the waste and sort of that type of thing. Simple questions like that, I think it would have been nice to have the applicant here and say, well, what about that? And then they could have responded, because we're just going by, you know, okay, they're building this type of form, but do we really know how that works and what all the technical parts with it? So I just think it would have been beneficial to have that. That's all.
Can I speak a little bit? It's Solomon Martin.
Well, ask and you shall receive. Mr. Martin, yes,
Yes,
please.
I am the agent and I am present. I just didn't get a chance to speak earlier when you asked in time, so
All right,
I was listening.
floor is yours.
In terms of noise, as I had mentioned, there is no noise pollution expected. I had put that on the application. If it is insulation, that is a quiet machine and all is indoors, except for the trucks. And in terms of truck traffic, it's like anything, it's pretty hard to say if there's one truck or two trucks a day or 2 trucks a week or what it is. It really depends on the size, I guess, and what the actual thing is that they're gonna do. And in terms of talking to the public, Martin did talk to these neighbors, and I was thinking that we should come up again to talk to them and answer their questions. And there is also an MOE approval for air and noise that we can do that if you wish we would. We're very familiar with that MOE approval. That is the air and the noise study. But it's something that it takes about 2 years till you get it back from the MOE. So we can do it and they can say off the bat a licensed guy if it's okay or not, but it takes a couple of years till you get the actual approval back. And I'm not sure if there was other questions that you wanted me to answer or not.
I don't know whether there's any other questions there, other than the fact that you do have a power generation. I think that would be probably where the biggest concern with noise is coming from. It's at the north end of the proposed building, probably as far.
It is on the north end and it will be lined out with sound barriers and a propane generator. So it's a propane generator is already a lot quieter than diesel. And if it's in a noise reduced building, you hardly hear that.
I would agree with you. I have a propane generator at my house, and yes, it comes on on a basis every 2 weeks, and I still don't hear it. So yes, propane generators are quite considerably less noise than a diesel generator. Okay, good to know.
And maybe it'll even be solar. We're starting with solar now, and there's quite a few shops on solar, so see how it works out, I guess.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Martin? Go. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Martin, for coming on.
Sure, thank you.
From the committee, how do you want to proceed with this? There is a recommendation there. Councillor Shea. Jeff?
I would move that we move forward with the recommendation, adopt the recommendation.
Prepare the bylaw. Okay. I have a seconder for that. Councillor Townsend. Okay. Any questions or comments on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. To have that bylaw prepared, probably be looking at January sometime. Yeah, the first or second. Okay, all right. I think that's the decision on that. And what's that? Anything further? Go ahead, Jeff.
Could we get a confirmation of what meeting that would come forward to, Jamie?
Go ahead, sir.
Pending no concerns from planning, the intent would be that that come forward on January 14th, provided we have the information from planning.
Okay. All right. With all business done on the agenda this afternoon, say we stand adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everyone out there. Merry Christmas, Blaine.